studios in New York City. This is Charlie Rose.
The legend of Alexander the Great has captured imaginations for ages. He was a king at age 20, an emperor at 25, and by the time he reached 32, he forged an empire that covered most of the ancient world. For years, Oliver Stone has been obsessed with the dream of creating a film about the Macedonian leader, and now he has done it. Here's the trailer for Alexander.
I've known many great men in my life, but only one Colossus.
A king isn't born, he's made.
What would you do if you ever reached the end of the world?
Never will there be an Alexander like you. Alexander the Great.
Conquer your fear! And I promise you'll conquer death!
The gods have a way of punishing such pride.
No man or woman can be too powerful or too beautiful without disaster befalling.
He never lusted for war, Alexander, or enjoyed it so.
How dare you!
Alexander, be reasonable! You are a name living forever in history.
The king lives!
The first rule of war is to do what you ask your men to do.
No one, not my finest enemy, has spoken like you to me!
In my womb I carried my avenger.
I see her in your eyes. Obey me this once.
It takes strong men to rule.
All you deserve, the world is yours.
In the end, all that matters is what you've done.
Joining me now is the filmmaker Oliver Stone and two of the stars, Angelina Jolie and Colin Farrell. I am pleased to have all of them here to talk about this movie. How long have you wanted to do this movie? A movie about Alexander.
It was a dream when I was a boy, film school, but in 1989 we started really trying to make it. German producer who did Munchausen came to me, wanted to do it. I thought it was nuts, never get it done. There was no digital technology back in '89. That started to happen around 2000, really big time. So by 1995 we tried with Tom Cruise, but it wasn't, the script wasn't ready. I got old, kind of like I got to do it now or never. Yeah. And there was these other competing projects. We were very lucky. Colin walked into our life, and he was destined to do it.
Really?
Irish, Dublin bar boy, but he was
Macedonian king, born of nobility.
But he was more
exactly right. A Dublin bar boy is Alexander.
But he had a theater background, and he worked in theater, and very rough provincial theaters, no money. Well, no bathrooms, no hotel.
I can't imagine her as his mother.
Well, that's later. I mean, I'm starting with the beginning. So, first of all, he's Alexander, and that's a big step.
That's a whole other thing.
Then she comes along the play, and I thought, it's a strange idea, but I've known Angelina since G. I've known her. I've seen her going through changes. I've seen her married to two different men.
Actually, by the way.
And I've seen her have a child, and in several tragedies in her life. She's an older woman in many ways, and inside than she projects. She's beautiful, but she could play older. She knows. He, on the other hand, when he was with her, would
play younger.
He would play younger, yeah. So it worked, and we built up to it with two young actors playing younger Alexander. So you get used to her as a mother, and then he comes on.
It's one of those things that that I think we all had the same thought everybody else did, but the characters are, they're very specific, and we suited them, and when we came on set, it felt natural in a strange way. So. But we do laugh about it.
Felt natural to be.
It felt that I understood Olympias and he understood Alexander.
Yeah. He was walking around with a diaper the whole show.
She recognized. Okay, but what? You think this is your last best shot at doing an epic, don't you?
Never say last.
Okay,
but
best
say
shot.
It's the shot that I've always wanted in my life, because I'm from that older tradition. Film schools, you make a mystery, you make a historical movie, but you make a gangster movie, you make a war movie, genres. Trying to make different film noir. So this, for me, is a big shot to do something non-contemporary. A lot of costumes, big story, big scope, crazy ambition, non-contemporary, a lot of costumes, big story, big scope, crazy ambitions. Your eyes are probably bigger than your stomach, right?
But what was it about?
Your reach exceeds your grasp.
All of that. What was it about Alexander?
He's one of the greatest. You would love to interview him, I'll tell you that. I mean, he had quite a life. He was probably the greatest, most colorful single individual in history. 100 events happened to him, 50 battles.
Yeah.
Mother like he had, a father like he had. Conquered the world at 27. Changed the whole nature of the world. He changed the map. And what he created was an empire of Hellenic and Eastern-Western proportions that was in basically the prototype of the Roman Empire. It worked. He brought peace and prosperity. People forget that whole basin boomed after his death. So don't underestimate Alexander. And since when have you seen 26, 27-year-old boys and girls run the world? Never again.
After killing his father.
No, we don't know that. And that's that's a harsh accusation. No, that's a key question.
I know it is. And what do you think?
No, I don't think. Well, you should see the movie. But I'm not. It's an interesting. It's an ambiguity there that.
Well, the theory is that the two of them cooperated.
That's one.
It's a theory.
Mother and
the other theory is that he didn't cooperate.
Absolutely.
And that it was her.
It was her.
The other theory is.
And the third theory is that if he didn't cooperate, what did he know? And what did he do about it? Because if you read the Greek mythologies and the Greek dramas, Orestes kills his mother, Clytemnestra.
Yeah.
He had to, and the Furies chased him down. But if he doesn't do anything, think about what happens the other way.
Now, you're getting lots of praise on this because, and I forget the full name, there is a professor at Oxford whose name is...
Robin Lane Fox.
Robin Lane Fox. R-O-B-I-N, Robin Lane Fox, who wrote a great book. Came out in, what, the 70s?
73.
About Alexander. Considered the best book about Alexander?
One of, yeah.
One of the best books. Tell me about how you saw Alexander.
How I saw Alexander as a man.
Yeah. I mean, what it is you felt like you had to capture as an actor?
With all the great conquests and achievements of his life, how he is known as the foremost man in antiquity and history, in respect to militarily, his kingship, what he achieved in the world, the spread of that idea of bringing East and West together, of unifying, diversifying cultures. Regardless of all that, as an actor, you can't go in with the weight of that from the start. You go in as a human. You go in, you look at his background, you look at what you think his nature was based on certain actions that he committed in his life, and what his nurture was based on, obviously, his parents, pertaining to his mother, Olympias, and his father, Philip. So I looked at him, as a child. I looked at his behaviour in the scenes where he's portrayed as a 4 or 5-year-old, and then as a 12 or 13-year-old when he turns Bucephalus, and what he had seen, what he had observed, what he was taught, the philosophies that were instilled in him. And I found someone who was deeply damaged and deeply suffered, of course, from that Greek idea, that pothos, that yearning, that wanting, that always staring off into the horizon.
Yeah, you have all those pictures of him staring off.
Yeah,
statue staring off.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
You have some sense that he was, some sympathy for him because you look at this man who yearned to conquer, whatever they said, the known world and all of that, and yet there was no peace within.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it harks back to something as simple as the lack of importance of the material. Someone like Alexander, who was so obsessed with the idea of destiny and with creating, carving your own destiny, and wondered, was destiny preordained? Did we have the power to create the road we travelled on? And if we did have the power to do that, did we have the power then to decide what direction that road travels in? And he wondered, were any of these things preordained? Were the myths real? Or was just the creation of the myth real? And once the myth was realised, then the myth, because his myth, was real in its creating, but at the end,
his myth, the myth of the world's greatest,
conqueror, the myth of this king of men, this leader of men, Prometheus, a friend to man, Zeus, Achilles, all these myths that he followed. The myth, even the legend of his father, which was not a myth.
What did his mother tell him?
What did she tell him?
You are king.
To be unafraid and to be strong and to survive, and that world is to conquer, to accept responsibility for who you are, for what you're capable of, for what's inside of you.
And what your destiny is.
Yeah, and she believed he had a greatness inside of him, and that came with responsibility, and she wanted him to see it through.
And so she encouraged him. She was there to push him.
She was very strong. But the more the same as Colin looking into the who Alexander was from conception, who she is and where she came from, and she was suddenly, her area is conquered. She's taken as a queen. She's taken out of her homeland.
Yeah.
She's lives at a time when women don't have any rights. She, if her son does not become king, what's going to happen to her life? What's going to happen to her son's life? Will they be exiled? Will they be killed? What are their chances to survive in this world? So she's an amazing thing, and this woman really existed. And so she became very strong. She had God. She believed in Dionysus, the god of chaos.
Right.
And she found a strength. She surrounded herself with things that gave her strength.
Now, when you are getting ready to make a movie this big, this historical, so much written about, even though the stuff that was written contemporaneously of his time was all destroyed, right?
Yes,
so
it's all gone.
All gone. So there's no...
300 years later, they started to discover, people wrote, and we still have those, Diodorus, Quintus Curtius, Arrian, Plutarch, two others. They wrote the stuff. They had read some of that material, like Ptolemy's memoirs. Right. So we assume, because some of the stories match, that that's the record. Robin Lane Fox goes in detail into this. He separates the tabloid Alexander. Angelina neglected to say that in the very first scene in the movie, she gives the child Alexander a snake to hold.
Yeah, she likes snakes.
No, not because she likes snakes, but because she wants him to conquer his fear. And it's a very powerful moment, because that's what she trained her son to be, a great. That was what her dream. It was all that matters, what you've done. And she was willing, the mother was willing to make a deal, so to speak, with the gods. The deal was he would die young, but have great glory that would last forever. Or he would live to an old age.
Die young and have immortality.
No memory.
Leave a good looking corpse.
So his mother is urging him to his death. His mother is urging him to...
Wait, what did you say?
Like the world's first rock star and leave a good looking corpse.
Yeah,
he was
the world's first rock star.
Well, he was more than that. But
of course he was.
She was urging him to his death, essentially. She was.
What was the role of Professor Fox?
He was a mainstay, one of the chief consultant. We had consultants for Babylon also, and Egypt, and don't forget Bactria, which is Afghanistan. Right. It's a very tricky place to figure out. And India. Couldn't find much out about India. Yeah. And Alexandria, Egypt. So we had 5 different places to moods. Robin's very strong on Greece, but we had to go to many Oxford ladies and professors on Persia. Really? And they're not in agreement. Intolerance is a very interesting movie shot by Griffith, D.W. Griffith in 1917. And he has a great Babylon sequence based on a lot of research, but we don't know. We don't know. We're guessing.
Where did Alexander die? And how far was it
Babylon.
from what was it actually in Babylon?
Yeah, 323 BC.
And how far was it from Baghdad?
About 20, 30 miles, I guess.
20, 30 miles.
Not far.
And he died of what?
Big question. You know, some people say fever, some people say poison, some people, on a larger scale, would say a broken heart. Because Hephaestion had died, his lover, and confidant and best friend. He also had died under a quick fever and somewhat mysterious circumstances. There's obviously the elements of murder involved, possible murder and conspiracy in both cases.
Who would have murdered him?
One potential person could have been the generals of Macedon who didn't like him. Because they felt this whole thing was coming to a ridiculous end. They'd been all the way to India. They marched back. They had a fortune to spend. They couldn't spend it. Alexander, this nutcase, is talking about going off to Arabia to investigate Arabia, then capture Carthage, Sicily, Rome.
Hephaestion was the only one that, although he didn't, I don't think...
Hephaestion was his lover from a long time...
All his life, his companion, his soulmate, his, they equated the relationship very much, the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, who were portrayed in the film Troy as cousins, but in true life were
never end with
close
Alexander.
friends.
You just keep exploring.
But Hephaestion was someone who accommodated Alexander's dream and Alexander's desire and Alexander's hunger to do what we are saying that he did. What is forgotten in history a lot is that, yes, he was a conqueror, but he attempted greatly to unify the people of the world. And yes, it was going to be the largest, almost monarchy the world would ever see. It would be one leader, but it would be a world that would be better as a result. Economies were going to be better. I mean, he didn't, as you've said before. He really did, I believe, had that intent, I believe. Yeah. And he didn't just loot libraries and burn them to the ground. I mean, he built libraries everywhere he went, which is a quote of Oliver's.
But he built cities. He built cities. He built cities,
of course.
So here is some of the other side of that. One, he was terribly ruthless in terms of people he conquered.
No, he was not. He was very generous.
Oh, there's stories about the fact that he would give women and children to some of the soldiers.
Absolutely not. He executed every soldier who he found who raped or looted.
He did.
Absolutely. He was very strict. He cried for his soldiers.
He killed
I'll tell you what he did. He made examples. If you made a deal with Alexander, he had a mobile empire, 11 years.
Right.
He stayed on the run. He never left a man behind who he hadn't defeated. He never would have let Osama stay there. I mean, he would have gotten Osama, right?
Right.
The idea is no enemy remains. He went after guerrilla tribes for 3 years in northwest Persia.
Until he got them.
Until he got every single one. If you broke your treaty with Alexander behind his back, you had trouble. Because nobody
Okay,
broke
but I'm
That's when he
depending
went
on
back.
you, because you just went through this experience, there is no example of...
Yeah, Thebes. Big example. And Persepolis. Big stories.
Right.
He had
Sacking cities.
Yeah, and Gaza. But in Thebes, for example, this is a good... you can talk to Dr. Kissinger about realpolitik. He wiped out Thebes. 6,000 dead, 30,000 enslaved. By so doing, he ended quickly the Greek revolt that occurred when his father died.
So it was necessary.
If he had not done that, he would have been embroiled in a civil war, involved maybe hundreds of thousands of dead.
There are those who say that he was not that great, that he was courageous always, but also that his father, Philip, had left him a remarkably good army and a remarkably good strategy.
No one is great. We're all dependent on conditions.
Right. Or we take what we can get, and that benefits us.
He did what he was. With what he had, he made lemonade.
What was his genius, other than vision? Let's say.
Yeah, other than vision, which I don't think is genius, because it takes what you do with vision to create true genius. I think.
Courage.
Generosity, courage. That wasn't his genius. Foresight, the will to improvise, absolute strength of character, and I think. I think that, again, not the vision, but again that pathos, that need, that quality that children have when they look out the window and they wonder what the world is about, and that us as adults, as men, as women, seem to lose as we grow up, because we live in a world where we do worry about the important things, which are economy, looking after our families, education for our kids, and we lose the sight of what's over the next hill. And he, as king, could have stayed in Macedon. He could have, yes, invaded across the Hellespont and defeated Darius, and then stayed in Babylon. But he didn't.
He did because he wouldn't have been satisfied.
No, he wouldn't have been satisfied ever.
Because he had the urge to drive,
Absolutely.
partly because his mother...
His greatness was the result of an incredible hunger.
And also wanted to stay away, perhaps, from mother, because perhaps something did happen
he's
at
running
the
away
father's
from his mother.
assassination.
Well, I think everyone on the piece had the same kind of opinion or viewpoint of each character.
Right.
I think that's how real the world became for everyone. I mean, the opinions were different in character, but when we were actors sitting around on a table, even though we get involved in arguments sometimes over drinks, it would come down to us all believing you would concede. When we were actors sitting around on a table, even though we get involved in arguments sometimes over drinks, it would come down to us all believing you would concede a certain point through ego and realise that you're not actually in character. You'd go, actually stepping outside of it, I can see what you mean. And based on these arguments, we all had a greater understanding of each other. We all believed things that we could then turn off, or disbelieve things in the other that we had to make real as fiction.
We should say this. Do you require, ask, demand, suggest that your principal actors read, study, do anything to, or do you leave it to them because you are hiring professionals and you know what they'll do?
We send them plenty of pictures, books, and anything they want. And some read it and some don't. Colin pretends to read everything, and he's very good at it. But the point is, they do come with a sense of heightened responsibility because they really owe it to the film. I mean, Alexander's a special subject. You don't get to make Alexander every day. It's a privilege, and we all took it like that. He made us better than ourselves.
As Baz Luhrmann has found out.
I used to be on the set with me Alexander books and Playboy on the inside. No, I was a little school child. Oliver, what are you reading? What are you reading?
You're into this character more than any character you've ever played.
Yeah, absolutely. It demanded that. There was no Playboy on the inside. No, I was a little school child. Oliver, what are you reading? What are you reading?
You're into this character more than any character you've ever played.
Yeah, absolutely. It demanded that. There was no choice. There was no halfway. It was such a separation in respect to just the career, the life, the soul, the things that we've talked about of this character and his circumstances, environment. It was such a change from anything I'd ever known. You know, I mean, to go back to and do a World War II piece or something pertaining to be a Vietnam piece, but was actually a story about the war at home before the boys got lost in the jungle. But that period, even that was closer. But this was such a different way of thinking. Society was so different.
You learned something?
Character was so extreme.
I mean, did you learn something?
Many things. I find it hard to I find it hard to put into words what I've learned, but many things. I probably still haven't. It probably will take a couple of years for me to be able to. I'm still very close to it.
See, that's the interesting thing about making movies, especially something that's historic. And it might have been also with Nixon, it may have been also with JFK. The whole sense of investing yourself into history.
Yeah.
You don't know where you're going to come out at the other end.
That's true. That's true.
But you invest. I want to go to
Or
this
if you'll come out at the other end.
Or if you'll come out at the other end. I want to come to this. This notion of the bisexuality, which has created such a controversy. It is said, true or false, that the Greek government or a cultural minister or someone is very upset with you because of your portrayal of Alexander.
Right.
True?
Greek lawyers are upset. The government.
They're suing you.
The government. Yeah, they threatened to. But
It's not the government.
I don't think it's the government. I think
it's
it's
rubbish.
the lawyer.
You know, it's
Who is it
absolute
then?
rubbish.
I mean, the lawyer's got to represent somebody. Who do they represent?
I think they're making noise right now. Let them sue. I mean, we've
But
been
who do they
sued
represent?
before.
I think it's actually
Themselves.
Greek lawyers who've decided that they don't like the idea that
I think it might be
Alexander,
it sounds
you know,
like
was
Was portrayed as
possibly
bisexual. Doesn't
Yeah,
everybody
for some
assume
reason,
Alexander was
which-
bisexual?
Yes, everybody does, and it's also nothing
they gonna
to
prove their
be.
case?
I don't, you know, that they're angry about it means that they're against it or that they find it offensive, which I think says something more about their character than ours for making the movie. You know,
Character of the lawyers.
Character of the lawyers who
Well,
would you know,
Oh, I'm sure none
be
of them
so
have even
angry
seen
about
the film.
something that in fact, if Alexander loved a man, why is that something to you know, be so angry about that you would consider suing somebody? You know, that just doesn't seem right.
I think a relationship like the relationship that's portrayed in this film between Alexander and Hephaestion, it would be comfortable for men if it was just about sex. But there's actually, even though sex is not something that we shot, it is at least hinted at. You know that they're lovers, but you hopefully get a sense that they're much more important than anything. Their relationship exists outside the realm of the physical. It exists on a much deeper level, and I think that's more uncomfortable for men sometimes. That openness.
Did you pull back at all on this in terms of any conflict with Warner Brothers about this at all?
No, there were suggestions made on violence and sexuality, and we got what they call a soft R, so that indicates that the board found this to be inoffensive, relatively inoffensive. This is it's not in your face, it's not.
Okay. No, I'm just
I'm not
asking about
interested in
whether
that kind of
you had to fight a lot of
The
battles about
story of
this.
this movie is so much more important than
Than the question of sexuality. Roll tape. This is a conversation between the two of them.
I've come to believe that fear of death drives all men, Hephaestion. This we didn't learn as schoolboys.
I've always believed, Alexander, but this seems so much bigger than us.
Did Patroclus start Achilles when they stood side by side at the siege of Troy?
Patroclus died first.
If you do, if you were to fall, Hephaestion, even if Macedonia were to lose a king, I will avenge you.
Tell me about, because Val Kilmer plays King Philip. He's not here. Tell me about King Philip. Alexander's
I get to talk
father. You were married to him.
It's interesting because I mean, there's even a question of whether she loved him or not, or you know, whether she killed him or not. Both of those are big questions. I think she maybe loved him and maybe killed him.
Killed him because.
I think she maybe loved him and maybe killed him.
Killed him because she tried to convince her son that he might inherit the kingdom.
He married another woman and had another son, and that became very threatening. And then that became a very dangerous time for my character. But God, I don't know if I am the person to kind of explain Philip.
Well, explain Philip to me.
Philip is the progenitor. He's the father of Rockefeller, the real John D. I mean, he's the man who started the dynasty. You need a strong father to get to where he got. You need strong parents, and both were huge. I mean, the civil war that raged between them. He was a debauchee. He had many wives, many children, and many male lovers. Actually, so the civil war that raged between them. He was a debauchee. He had many wives, many children, and many male lovers. Actually, so the pattern was not unusual. Alexander was very, let's say, restrained in comparison to his father.
Did he get the desire to conquer from his father?
Sure.
All right.
Absolutely.
But or his mother. I'm not sure about that. I think he got the practical aspect of how to build an army and how to be real. But I think mom had the big vision, the biggest vision of all. You're the son of Zeus, is what she said. You're the son of Zeus.
Yeah, she doesn't acknowledge Philip as the father.
It was big.
That's why I can answer that question. Philip's not his
your
father.
Zeus is your father.
That's right. That's right.
So I had a baby with Zeus. Roll tape. This is King Philip, played by Val Kilmer and Alexander, arguing at a celebration.
Apologize by Zeus before you dishonor me. He's afraid the man who called my mother a whore and me a bastard. And I dishonor you! Ah, you listen like your mother. Atlas is my family now, the same as you. Then choose your relatives more carefully. Don't expect me to sit here and watch you shame yourself. Shame even.
You insult me!
I insult you! A man not fit to lick the ground my mother walks on! You dog! I've nothing to be ashamed of, you arrogant brat! I'll marry the girl if I want. And I'll have as many sons as I want, and there's nothing you or your harpy mother can do about it! Why, you drunken man, must you think everything I do and say comes from my mother?
Because I know her heart, Bahira. And I see her in your eyes. You covet this throne too much. Now we all know that she-wolf of a mother of yours wants me dead. Well, you can both dream, boy.
Come, Philip, this is the wine talking. Leave the boy, it'll wait till morning.
Now! I command you. Apologize to your kinsman.
He's good. Val is
He's good.
Yeah, he's great.
strong.
He does a great job.
It's a happy set, huh?
It was, yeah. We had...
It was a happy family. It was a happy set.
It was a happy
It
set.
was a happy set.
Yeah.
It was a very supportive set. Everybody was very nurturing to each other and very supportive because I think everybody was putting in their best work and their best effort. And yeah, it really needed to be that way. It was an intense set.
Where was it shot?
Morocco, Thailand, and England.
Morocco.
Morocco started, England in the middle, and Thailand.
And this is shot in a studio somewhere. The scene we just
That's
saw
England.
in Pinewood, in London. That's out of London.
Yeah.
Here's another scene between Alexander and Olympias. Here it is.
Understand how Philip thinks. For your own sake, your life hangs in the balance. His spies are inside your closest circle.
I'm his only worthy son. You crazed woman. He'd never hurt me. Even if Eurydice had a boy, he'd be 20 before he'd let him rule.
Yes. And you would be 40. Old and wise. Like Parmenion. And Philip's young son would be 20. Like you. And Philip's young son would be 20. Like you. Now. But raised by him. His blood. He will never give you the throne now, Alexander. Never.
There was real competition. Was there, like Howard Hughes, competition to make this? I mean, I mentioned the fact that Baz Luhrmann
There was a
talking to
tremendous
doing
amount
with
of pressure.
Leonardo.
Yeah, there was, but frankly, for me, the competition was the script. The script was the only, and that was the hardest part, to bring it out. To get 5 acts, 5 hours, down to 3 acts, 3 hours. It's a lot cut out. You know that. I mean, a movie like this, you can't make a Life of Alexander. Who's done A Life of Alexander?
Richard Burton.
Yes, and it didn't work, unfortunately.
I know it didn't. I don't know why, but I never saw
you
it.
get exhausted in Greece after Act 1. Act 2 is Persia. It's over. What happens to Bactria and India and the rest of Persia? You have to figure out a way, a parallel device, to bring in all that life together in 3 hours. Very difficult.
Is it tough today or easier today because of the film techniques you have in terms of digital technology to do battle scenes and things like that? Has that become significantly easier?
Yes and no. It's sometimes they don't work. Shots don't work. You have to really work them, and you have to make the right look, the right feel, the right lighting. It's very complicated and it's very expensive. Sometimes it's easier to work real men. We had real men near camera as much as possible. We always tried to have 500 professional soldiers plus the Moroccan army or the Thai army. We had like 1,500 men around camera. So we have a middle ground and a foreground, and then in the far background it becomes digital. But if you start working digital in middle ground, you're in trouble, I think, a lot. Especially if you want to do realism. You know, I'm not talking about, I love Lord of the Rings, but it's a bit of a fantasy.
Yeah,
and Peter Jackson does get away with stuff that we could never get away with.
Well,
People don't
He got away with it because
It's more fantasy.
because it's more fantasy. Because it's more
you
moving. Yeah,
accept
right.
it as fantasy. When you see Babylon and you see Alexandria, people are going to be looking, you know, and we really worked very hard with a French company, Bouffe, to make it very gritty, very real. We scratched they worked for hours on this thing.
Tell me this. You will, I know. What's it like to work with him? And don't...
It's tough. Jesus, it's tough. I mean, it's, you know, by the end of it, I was at the end of my mind, and physically I was destroyed by the end of this film. That's not his fault. That's the fault of a man called Alexander, and a journey that was 11 years. And my own fault for just throwing myself into it, for good, bad, or indifferent, whatever, is up there at the end of the day. The experience was potentially destroying.
In other words, it'll either kill you or make you stronger.
Yeah, and I'm still alive, so let's hope it was the latter, not the former. Having said that, I would do anything with or for the man.
Would
genuinely,
you really?
Yeah. I would not read the script. I would not. If
to respect him more than you did when you went in, you learned to
no,
appreciate his talents more.
I respected him a huge amount when I went in. I had seen all his movies, I think, bar El Salvador, which I've obviously subsequently seen. So I had a huge amount of respect. But then you put sometimes people that you respect from afar, when you put a human face and you put a personality to that, when you're fortunate enough to, like I've met some people that I've admired from afar. And it just doesn't match, or it's a little bit of a letdown. My father used to always say, never meet your heroes. Not to say for a second that you're a hero or anything like that. I wouldn't like to, blow your horn that bad, or good, as the case may be. But with Oliver, I had a newfound respect for him. I just respect him as an artist, and then I found that having met him, I could respect him as a man, as a visionary, as a
he has integrity.
Integrity, and he's a teller of truths, in a world that really does, as a friend of his. In a world, his truth, always his truth, not yours.
No, his truth, that's exactly
not yours,
right. In other words, he is true to his own truth.
Well, that's what integrity is, I think.
To what he believes.
To what he believes, not to what the world believes. You'll never please everyone. And what good artists do, I think, and what good art is, it comes from a place of selfishness. It comes from painting a picture, writing a song, singing a song, making a film, writing a script because you have to. Because you need to, not purely because you want to, or it's a frivolous waste of time. And I love a good popcorn movie like The Next Man,
you like a good popcorn movie?
Oh yeah, man, I'm like, of course.
But at the same time, when you get involved in something that has this reach and this depth and this...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a selfish and very desperate need.
Is he different for women than he is for men, you think?
I think he's different when directing someone playing a mother.
Do you really?
Because I think he has tremendous respect for his mother.
That's clear from knowing his background.
Yeah. But no, I didn't feel that way. I mean, I didn't, obviously, I couldn't really compare, but I was challenged more than I've ever been in my life, but I was in heaven as an artist to be with a real director who had vision and strength and could help me and make me better and teach me and guide me. And I felt safe to be bold and try things in his hands. So I was,
without asking, just doing it.
Yeah, I mean, he asks a lot of you. He demands, but he'll never demand as much from you as he demands from himself. He's, he's so hardworking that he makes everybody want to come and do everything they can do to at least, he's trying.
You two seem to me to be at the best place you've ever been in your career and personal lives. You have a baby, and we've walked through conversations with you about the change it brought.
Yeah.
But you have, each film seems to enlarge your options.
Manhood.
No, not manhood.
My egotistic manhood.
Well,
no. It
no,
has.
my sense is your ego is not affected by all of this.
Not really. Not really.
Yeah.
Look, I've had such an interesting time. In 11 years, I started off doing, as Oliver said, I did theatre school full time, and I worked on the stage in Sydney and in London, and then I did television for 3 years,
right,
which
BBC
I loved.
Stuff.
Which I love, BBC stuff, which I loved, man. I went to work, every day with a bunch of actors, hit the marks. Went to the pub for lunch every day with the electricians. Had 3 pints of Guinness, a bowl of seafood chowder. Back, you'd shoot 3 more hours of television. But that's where I kind of learned my craft, working with amazing Irish actors. Tony Doyle, God bless him, who's up there now. Bertie Sweeney, who played my uncle, who's up there as well.
Yeah. And
I just worked with amazing actors who had forged out livings, who had 4 children, who were educated, who had 4-bedroom detached houses, and what they'd done is bits of regional theatre and the odd little small part in a TV show every now and then. But they were working actors. They had an enormous amount of craft. They had a kind of a chameleonic ability to change week to week. I mean, for me and the experience I've had, I do maybe 2, maybe 3 gigs in a year because I'm working a lot. These guys were shifting and changing. They were doing 50 characters a year, and each with incredible conviction and incredible detail. So I got to learn off those boys, and then hopefully I get to use some of that in this film and every other job that I've done since. But it has gotten. I've been fortunate enough to have this trip, and I mean, Joel has been great to me, and then I got to work with Oliver.
Joel Schumacher.
Yeah, it's been
did
great
two
to me.
films with
Three, I did a day on Veronica Gale.
Oh, that's right, I forgot about that.
And then I got to work with this man, and then I got to do the thing with Robert Town and then Terrence Malick. So professionally, I'm golden. Then personally, yeah, the son.
Yeah,
yeah, love
but there is this sense about you that you are the next big thing. Is that fair to say, Oliver?
I've been the next big thing for 16 years, Charlie. What are you saying?
What?
D'Artagnan in the Four Musketeers. I think Colin is a great actor, and I really mean that. I think it's unfortunate that he's so, frankly, sexy and handsome. I think it works against him, and people judge him unfairly. And they would give a break to somebody with a more plain face. Frankly, that's the way the world works.
And therefore, I mean, with both of them, again, this is a discussion that we've had before.
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and they pay a lot of attention to their celebrity life and their private life.
I'm from that school that likes to see pretty people in movies. I don't know. My mom taught me that in the 30s and the 40s. And
would she say, let's go watch some pretty people?
Well, yeah, you went to the movies to see larger-than-life and beautiful movies. This is a throwback. Somebody, my hardest French critic said this is Cecil B. DeMille in a good way. This is a throwback to il a dit que c'est ancien et c'est moderne. It's ancient and it's modern at the same time. And that's the highest compliment you could say about this movie.
You recently took advantage of the option available to you to become a French citizen because your mother's French.
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Well, partly because, you know, I may have to if the currency of America keeps going the way it is. I mean, the euro is worth... Well, partly because... you know, I may have to if the currency of America keeps going the way it is. I mean, the euro is worth quite a bit more.
It's up to above $1.30. It's above $1.30.
You know, who knows where you're going to end up? You never know where you're going to end up living in this life.
Yeah. But does it have anything to do with the politics of the country?
No.
It doesn't. You're not running.
And number two, well, France has stayed a sane place, as you know, in politics. And number two, because it was the movie was subsidized by Germany, France, and England, and by qualifying as a French citizen, you know, the movie benefited greatly. So it's really a French movie, I mean, a French-English movie. This is very interesting. I mean, Hollywood does not make these kinds of movies. This, you have to realize, is an independent film.
It doesn't make these kind of movies?
No, it would never have been made in America. Alexander is too messy a life. Too
messy
a life. He also has
you mean the sexuality
not
and
only that,
the relationships and all that.
It just wouldn't have been made.
Really?
Too expensive.
Because I thought only these expensive movies were made in America.
It was the Germans, the French, and English.
Not anymore.
They don't make that in America.
The big movies that you're not sure how they're going to do or how they're going to be received, or if they're very...
Every time you interview these multi-billionaires who run these corporations and you like them so much, you don't understand that they're killing movies too. They're paying the executives so much damn money. The corporations are killing movies. Development committees are not allowing good movies to be made. They cut off the ends of the scripts.
Who are we talking about, Oliver? Just before you sort of lash out.
Look at him. He's just
like I mean, the problem with the media in New York, they love money. They always like all them people who make a lot of money come on and they're movie stars here. People who make a lot of money come on and they're movie stars here. In the old days, it would be you'd get Greta Garbo or Angelina on. You know.
It was, in fact, a very difficult film, and just simply wouldn't have been made. Wasn't going to be made.
Yeah.
It had to be made. A lot of foreign people came in and decided they would be bold enough to invest a lot of money in a life that could be considered controversial or different or interesting or too complex or so.
But isn't it all because of we're such a puritanical society over here that we don't want to see, a political leader like Alexander who's bisexual, and therefore it's offensive to studio heads?
Very good question. Very good question. The Christian church did destroy a lot of Alexander's history. It's gone. You see, we know a lot more about the 5th century Greeks than we know about the 4th century Alexander. Why is that?
You tell me.
Did you read the Da Vinci Code? I'm just joking.
Do you wish you were making the Da Vinci Code? No, you don't.
No, I'd love to see the movie, and I'm sure Ron Howard's going to do a great job.
I am too, yeah.
I like to do something sort of a little bit more spontaneous.
What is spontaneous about Alexander?
It grew. It became something every day.
In other words, what? But the story is, what is spontaneous about the story? I mean, meaning that today you're going to get up and you have a different story than you did last week?
No, we mixed it up. I mean, if you took Colin and threw him on a horse up against elephants in some Thai forest, you didn't know what the hell was going to happen next.
But we had, with your script and with certain guidelines and shot lists, each day threw up its own, its own spontaneity.
Every day was a challenge.
It really was.
It was.
Yeah.
Cost you what, 150 million?
Yeah.
About that?
Yeah.
More or less.
Started in the
Less,
Himalayas. We shot second unit, and then we finished in Thailand in the Moroccan mountains. We went everywhere. We did a lot with little. Believe it or not, 94 days we shot the whole thing. Because these guys worked hard.
How's he going to do at the box office?
Who knows these things?
Okay, but is it better, or is it going to be, because it's got European financing and because of all that, is it going to be a better international film? Is it going to have more international legs than most films?
Here's what I hope. I hope that people all over the world will see this because it's the want-to-see kind of movie. It's the kind of movie I wanted to see when I was young. I still want to see it. I love movies, but there's not enough big movies out there, and I just hope they don't kill off the spectacle of it.
I do, too. Very much. Let's take one roll tape. Here it is.
Generals question your obsession with Darius. They say it was never meant for you to be king of Asia.
Naturally. They want only to return to their homes rich with gold. But I've seen the future, Hephaestion. I've seen it now 1,000 times, on 1,000 faces. These people need change.
Some say these Alexandrians have become extensions of Alexander himself. They draw people into the cities so as to make slaves.
But we freed them, Hephaestion, from the Persia where everyone lived as slaves. To free the people of the world. Such would be beyond the glory of Achilles.
Remember the fates of these heroes. They suffered greatly.
Oh, we all suffer. Your father, mine. They all came to the end of their time, and in the end, when it's over, all that matters is what you've done.
Where do you take historical and dramatic license? You've got on your set with you a guy who knows the history, right?
Yes.
So how do you decide if it advances the story, if it has its own truth, then you use it?
Yes. How do you have to take 50 battles, 100 events, and make it into 3 hours, 3 acts. We followed the themes of mother. He had 4 relationships in the movie, with the mother, with the father, with Hephaestion, and you neglected to mention Rosario Dawson, who was Roxanne.
I did.
Who was sort of a surrogate mother. Yeah. She becomes the... he marries his mother and murders his father. Is one way you could interpret the movie, if you want to go there. Again. 4 relationships, parallel time. And what happens in his life, it's a fascinating story. I mean, everything he dreams. Let's say Barry Bonds wanted to be bigger than Willie Mays, right? And he was. Because he dreamed about Willie Mays. He dreams about Achilles the same way, and he outdoes Achilles. Then he outdoes Heracles. Can you imagine that? The greatest heroes of Greek time. He goes all the way to the east, where Dionysus went.
Chasing Dionysus.
Yeah, Dionysus
so maybe he wasn't running from his
mother. He's chasing something.
Towards Dionysus was a god.
He was running towards him.
Alexander reached the end of the rope, and the only thing left, in my opinion, is Prometheus. Prometheus remember who he was. He was a titan who gave fire to man.
Yeah.
And as a result, they pecked out his liver every night, right? Zeus sent the eagle to peck out his liver.
I saw the eagle.
You saw the eagle.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think you reach a place where you become friend to man. And when you do, sometimes you pay a high sacrifice.
Tell me what you wanted to show about the mother. Olympias.
Well, what's like when you're asking about like the truth of things, so it's how accurate. I think it's the essence of the people, or who they are, what they represented. What I wanted to, I think in a film this size, you do start to think about how you affect the other characters, not just your own individual journey, but very much who she was to him. I'm a mom. I couldn't have played her a few years ago, but I know what it is to. I would die for my son, and if my son was in danger, I would kill for my son, and that alone. And if he needed to be as strong as she pushed Alexander to be in order to survive, then I would be driven mad to try to make him that capable, because I love him that much. So I had to come from a place of finding everything about her. This is why I defend her now. Everything about her that made sense to me, that I could love.
And you also
support.
seem to be intrigued by the notion of whether Alexander was fleeing her or not. Whether she chased him away, or he was trying to get away from her. Are you still unsettled?
There's an interesting thing is most mothers that see this film don't like that idea. I think they feel that this idea of you run from your parent who's tried to support you and nurture you in whatever way you feel to. A lot of men or women who, you know, the daughters and the sons feel, you know, this is a person who's pushing me away. But as a mother, that thought upsets me.
Yeah, so I'm sure it does, but at times for a young man, you know, it is a survival technique. I think a mother's love, as wonderful as it is, and my mother's my best friend in the world. Really.
She is.
She's my best friend.
But can I just say it's beyond that with you. You are so close. Your family is...
We're very close.
Your sister
she's outside.
is sitting right outside the green room. She's your publicity person.
With a book of matches, I hope.
Yeah. Because it's been tough for you.
Yeah.
Just hang on. Hang on.
But, you know, a mother's life, we're very close, but a mother's life is almost at a state, a mother's love strangling in its purity, in its heaviness, in its depth. I think, you know, it is a beautiful thing, but I think it is a thing you have to go away from at one stage. At least I had to, and then come back to, and then it's tolerable. You have to go. You have to find your own footing. You know, you have to. A father is not so much.
There's linchpin is that their father has been murdered, possibly by your mother.
I know that. We did that already, man. We got that in.
Well, you may have never become king.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah. At the end, give me some sense of Alexander, where he was in his own head. You know, everybody says he was despairing because he had conquered the known world. This is the myth, or not. Despairing because he'd conquered the known world and there was no other place, and so he was, in the end, a man of sadness.
I think he had moments throughout his life. I know he had moments of great glory. I think those moments of great glory were not just realised but lived to their completion. I think he felt extreme joy. I mean, you could nearly say bipolar. Nearly.
Do you think he was a manic depressive?
With as melancholy as he was, and with that desire to succeed, and that desire being something that was achieved, realised, he had moments of sublime happiness. And he was the most powerful man in the world. People lauded him, people hailed him, people hailed him as a god. He wondered himself, and with the background that he had considered, you know, as a result of his mother saying that he was son of Zeus. And then the oracle at Siwa, you know, told him, confirmed that he was the son of Zeus. And that was kind of all he needed as well, at a certain stage, to take that idea and fly with it. But yes, at the end, in the very end, not the very end, but after Babylon, with his obsession, I found that nothing was achievable. All the greatness that was achieved was almost irrelevant in respect to the contentment of his heart, and that's what I found personally.
And therefore he was always reaching out to...
Always consistently reaching for the horizon, but as we all know, when you get to the horizon dissipates. It constantly goes back.
He had three wives, he had a mistress, and he had at least 2 known children.
And he didn't have an heir for quite a while.
Didn't have an heir?
For quite a while, for 3-4 years, before Roxanne got pregnant. And God knows he tried. And that was something that caused him a lot of pain as well. And a lot of doubt. There was betrayals. He demanded trust off his men, and as Oliver said, if you defied the treaty, you know, in the rear, Alexander would go back. You would pay a high price. Also, if you were a friend or a general of his, and you betrayed his trust, which happened on more than one occasion,
he would have you killed.
He would have you killed, and he would
slowly
feel absolutely, and he would go through a great deal of pain.
Yeah.
To get information on what else might be involved.
Not to make you suffer.
But he would go through a great deal of pain. He wasn't flippant about it. This man was not Herod. He did not enjoy his success and his riches, incredibly. And
that's terrible, isn't it?
There's a certain sadness to it,
yeah,
but it was something else. That's not where his happiness lived. Where did his happiness live? I don't know. But it didn't live in the material. There's a scene in the mutiny in the film towards the end where he says, because you've fallen in love with all the things in life that destroy men, do you not see? The men are saying they're afraid. They want to go home. It's been a long time. He understands it, but he's disgusted that they're afraid. They never were before, and the reason why they're afraid, which is why sometimes actors become afraid, is because now they have things to lose. They have things to lose at this stage that they never had. They have material goods. They have women that they want to go back and see. They have homes. They have land now. They never had these things. They never feared. Now they fear because they've fallen in love with all the things in life that destroy men. And that is something that is fundamentally destroying for his soul, Alexander. Heartbreaking. And it wasn't long after that they then turned around and went back to Babylon. You know, and he finally conceded.
He never returned to Greece.
He never returned to Greece, no.
I found that astounding.
And he never saw his mother again.
And his mother was not with him.
No.
In Baghdad.
He could have brought her easily. He could have brought her out.
You know,
why didn't he?
That's why the movie's interesting.
Why didn't he bring her out?
It speculates
exactly
on that point.
What?
I don't know. Why didn't he? He should have.
Well, go back to the assassination.
Well, you are protective of her.
Yeah.
I am.
You really
I
are.
think that's
this is because you've been a mother. You are a mother.
Maybe also because I know she really lived, and I studied. I went inside her to try to understand her, and I felt I know she's a difficult character. I know she's a dark person. I know she's a hard woman. But I also know that something made her that way. And so I'm sympathetic to her.
But again, for me, it goes back to the fact that, you know, Alexander was, I think, believed very much in his mother's, you know, probable involvement in the death of his father. And that, in a roundabout way, would also lead him to kind of down the road of patricide, by not seeing it coming and not doing anything about it and being quiet. So I think it was just better out of sight, out of mind. I think it was something as simple and painful as that.
I think Colin, being Irish, puts a little too much melancholy in it. Makes him too much Hamlet. And there is a bit of Hamlet in him, but he says, I don't know where his happiness was. I think his happiness was in battle, in organizing, in winning, in being with the soldiers, knowing their names, crying over them. He was down in the face. He was wounded 8 times, you know. 8 times. And the greatest battle of all is the last one in the film, the Indian battle you haven't mentioned, where he actually, in real life, in Multan, he practically sacrificed his life to change the tide of battle. He jumped with 4 companions into a city of thousands of hostile Indians, and the army was on the other side of the wall, and they saw him jump over the wall. He said, do you want to live forever? And he jumped, and they stormed over the wall.
But what I say to you is, and you miss a very important point, I think, is that Alexander, the battles, 50 battles you say, the longest of which took how long? Gaugamela took what,
guerrilla
35?
warfare, too.
I know there was guerrilla warfare, but
what's the answer? The longest took what?
And hunting, don't forget hunting.
My point being that in 11 years, those moments and the hunting, those moments were so few and far between in respect to the moments that he spent on his own, the moments that he spent doing books, the moment that he spent thinking about his mother, the moments that he spent wondering why his wife wasn't pregnant,
administration,
the isolation of leadership. I think there was profound
He had
things
lots
that
of
took
scientists
place.
around
I tell you one thing, there was a lot of glory when I worked on the film, but a very extreme example is that I worked on this film for 6 months and I still come out saying it was one of the saddest and most painful experiences of my life. Well, you hired an Irishman. Why? Did you think there was something akin then between you?
No,
you hired an Irishman.
I know there's sadness there, but you know.
And great glory. There was days I had on the set that were
I
fantastic.
think of Alexander as a bright soul because everyone speaks of him as an energetic presence. He'd come in the room and he'd pick up the room. He wasn't like Hamlet.
He was a great performer.
He was a great performer.
He was a great performer. But what, you know, there's a reason why he was performing, maybe.
I like Alexander. I think he's one of the greats.
I fell madly in love with him.
Interesting thing about this is that he died, what, June 10th?
June 10th, yeah.
On June 7th, before he was dead, 7,000, a lot of people marched by as he was dying.
Soldiers,
Marched by as he was dying.
Soldiers,
You know, do we have any evidence of his thoughts as he knew he was dying?
We did a scene in the movie that's quite explicit about that. I think we should. It's really an amazing scene. It's the death moments, the last 25 images in his mind. I hope you have a chance to see.
You'll have to wait and see the movie, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Cheers.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Very much.
Hang around.
Thank you for joining us. See you next time. See you next time.